Hi, I am the moderator for this session today. My name is Jessica Wilson-Saya. I am the developer for Digital Scholarship at C. Smith Reynolds Library. I am pleased to introduce to you today Anna Lacy is a PhD candidate in the Department of History at the University of Delaware. Her dissertation explores household accidents in the 19th century and changing ideas about safety and danger in the home. She's project coordinator for the Colored Conventions Project and the co-chair of the Digital Archives and National Teaching Partners Committee. Brandi Locke is also a PhD student at the University of Delaware. Her work focuses on 19th century African-American women's activist literature and history. She is co-chair of the Digital Archives and National Teaching Partners Committee of the Colored Conventions Project. Please join me in welcoming Anna and Brandi.
Alrighty, so hi everyone, and thank you to Carrie, Molly, and the DH at Wake Forest Summer Institute for having us. Again, I'm Brandi, and my co-chair Anna is here to present with me, and we're so excited to talk to you today about what community and collections mean to us at the Colored Conventions Project. In particular, we're here to tell you about some of our signature initiatives that introduce digital curation skills to team members and partners in a range of learning environments. But we want to start from the beginning. So we'll start by telling you more about us. The CCP, as we call ourselves, our greatest strength is our team. Our core team consists of about 25 members at the University of Delaware and Penn State. Our graduate student leaders, librarians, faculty, and undergraduate researchers meet in committees each week. One of the things that we'd love to do together is eat amazing Jamaican food at all of our meetings. But we also come together to execute projects that range from coordinating outreach to event planning to archival research, curriculum development, and website management. Our team members come from all corners of our universities, from computer science to fashion studies and beyond. Our wider CCP community includes national teaching partners that span institutions across the US and Canada, as well as satellite partners, volunteer transcribers, and digital humanists who have analyzed our corpus. We're so grateful to our many partners for their collaborations in hosting events, gathering records, and creating digital exhibits at coloredconventions.org. We believe that diversity and interdisciplinarity of our team are integral to our success. We have deliberately created a community where differences in approaches, levels of training, and perspective are respected and welcome. These dynamic features punctuate every aspect of our project, from our organizational structure and principles, down to our decision-making procedures, professional training, and distributive labor model. Supported by a collective culture of care, it all comes together to create a nimble, adaptive, intellectual community in which our people thrive. If you're having audio issues, please let me know if you need me to repeat myself. I have no problem doing that. I'm super sorry if it's happening on my end. Let me know. As I was saying, during this presentation, we will highlight a few more of the pertinent areas where the CCP has excelled as a way to create a space and a shared language for generative conversation between stakeholders, but more critically at our home institution. And Anna's going to tell you a little bit about our principles as a project.
So all of our work is organized around our project principles. And our work, these principles are inspired by the HEMA's principles of environmental justice and democratic organizing. These were designed to help reach a common understanding between participants from different cultures, politics, and organizations. And you'll hear a bit about these principles throughout our presentation, but we want to highlight our fourth principle. So mirroring the Colored Convention's focus on labor rights and Black economic health, our project seeks structures and support that honor the work members bring to the project through equitable compensation, acknowledgement, and attribution. CCP team members are paid for their work. Undergraduate researchers start at a rate of $15 per hour, and graduate leaders begin at $20 per hour. CCP also provides professional development funding for graduate students and senior undergraduates to present at conferences, as well as to attend digital humanities workshops such as Streamlab and HILP. And this support plays a really important role in helping us to retain team members who will then grow into team leaders. And here you'll see our memo of understanding that all team members sign on to at the beginning of each term. And another one of our principles is also that we seek to enact collective organizing principles. So that means that we present collectively. So today you'll see Brandi and I present, but you can also see a fuller snapshot of all the presentations that we've done on our project CV on our website. So here's just the first 2 pages. And we're really attentive to making sure that it's not just senior team members present at conferences. We also bring undergraduates and junior grad students, and we have an apprenticeship model so we can train everyone up so that they're pretty comfortable presenting by the time they get to the end of graduate school.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar with our work, you might be legitimately wondering, what is the Color Conventions movement anyway? So we're glad that you are thinking about this, and we'll let you know now. The Color Conventions movement, the historical movement, was a 19th century Black intellectual and political organizing movement that began in 1830 in Philadelphia, but continued into the turn of the century. This historical movement is considered unremembered history because, though it was well known in its time, it's neither studied nor analyzed in contemporary histories and scholarship. So the CCP makes some really important critical historiographical interventions in several areas through our studies of the Color Conventions movement. We extend and critique temporal boundaries as they relate to the long civil rights movement, arguing that the Color Conventions movement offers a more accurate beginning in 1830, not the 1950s and 60s. We reject the centrality of the dominant white abolitionist narratives, which displace Black agency to instead profess of the triumph of Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. And we complicate the aged, generalized, and often inaccurate dominant narratives that the American public has inherited by introducing through the conventions multiple definitions of American citizenship, the roles and genealogies of Black intellectual organizers, and so much more. Within the context of our archive, we seek to locate materials related to conventions held throughout the post-bellum era, which has been identified as an unexpectedly rich and deep vein of Black political texts and organizing history, with direct through lines to contemporary movements that center, movements for social justice and equity. Lately, our project has expanded also beyond the existing scholarship that centers the minutes and proceedings of the conventions movement to look at a wider range of documents that include memorials, petitions, and news coverage. And so CCP hopes to explode previous understandings of our mapping of Black organizing back onto anti-slavery activism by instead representing its reach into many other areas, including access to the ballot box, the jury box, and the classroom. The Color Conventions movement lasted 7 decades, but its legacies are in people, ideas, places, and institutions that continue into the present in a rhizomatic manner through organizations ranging from the NAACP, the Urban League, the National Federation of Teachers, the Equal Rights League, the Black Club Women's Movement, and really truly down to Black Lives Matter. The way that we've been able to do this in an unprecedented way is by collecting together the scattered archive into one place. Our work focuses on collecting and publishing the records of the Color Conventions that took place across all of the United States and Canada, in which tens of thousands of Black people, both the self-liberated and those who were born free, traveled great distances at great risk to strategize how the race would secure civil rights, educational access, access to jobs, wages, and dignity. Despite these narratives not being embedded in the teaching of history, we've collected documents and materials from more than 200 state and national colored conventions and published them online as a testament to ongoing struggles for equality. In total, this includes more than 300 convention records made searchable for the very first time by over 2,000 public transcribers.
CCP enacts a distributed model towards archives building. Our Digital Archives Committee works alongside national teaching partners and Mellon satellite partners to collect documents from local archives. We hold our annual Douglas Day event to come together in community, that is students, faculty, librarians, church members, and the general public to transcribe records and celebrate the long history of Black activism. So this right here is a visualization that charts the number of state colored conventions, and those are in lime green, as well as national conventions in dark green. and compares it to other gatherings of Black people, such as the Afro-American League in light blue, labor conventions in gray, educational conventions in red, and civil rights conventions in orange. And this reflects the documents that we currently have in hand and we've processed on our site. We thought there was originally a gap in the conventions, but our teaching partner, Kate Masser at Northwestern, discovered 3 state conventions that were held in this window between 1837 and 1840. And this is just one example of how our partnerships are helping to change our claims about the movement's history. And we'll talk a little bit more about this partnership later on in the presentation. So as time unfolds, we see not just national conventions, but a number of state conventions. And during Reconstruction, we see an explosion in state conventions, which continue up and throughout the 1890s. And this is the work that we do at the Colored Conventions Project. And by its nature, we must work with a cross-section of people across North America to build our archive and continue to provide free public access to these materials.
So one of our signature initiatives that we're really, really proud of is Douglas Day. Frederick Douglass was one of the most renowned delegates of the Colored Conventions movement. In his lifetime, he attended more than 40 conventions and served as president to several of them. Co-founder Dr. Jim Casey learned that Douglass's birthday used to be an annual celebration among Black communities across the country to celebrate and commemorate his legacy, as well as to support grassroots organizing to address local needs and issues in their day. In 2016, Jim teamed up with our Outreach Committee Chair, Denise Berger, to revitalize the day in order to bring awareness to the historical Colored Conventions movement and initiate a community-sourced, which is our preferred term over crowdsourced, process for transcribing our records so that they could be fully searchable. Each Douglas Day, we have hundreds of participants who join us using our organizing tools in order to transcribe our records. These participants come from all across North America and Europe and engage us through dozens of partnering groups and institutions. To many of our participants, Douglas Day serves as the first encounter to Black digital collections, curated digital exhibits, and transcription or annotation of digital records. Additionally, our event programs educate participants about the importance of supporting Black archival preservation projects and offers a platform for young people to share with participants what engaging these histories through digital records means to them by performing their own original essays and poetry. Now, Douglas Day 2020 is probably one of our favorite accomplishments because we partnered with graduate students, faculty, and librarians from Howard University and Penn State's Digital Anna Julia Cooper project. Anna Julia Cooper, by the way, was a colleague of Frederick Douglass and a mentee of his, and advanced his legacy through much organizing through the following century after he passed. In the long run up to our joint transcription event, we joined this team in building a Zooniverse-based transcription platform from scratch, which included assessing the digitized collection of theirs, making inventories, and curating metadata upon which their transcription process was scaffolded for the volunteer transcribers. In addition to important skills in project management and executing public and virtual events, our partners learned key skills in managing digital collections for transcription, which is vitally important skills for Black archives where preservation and digitization projects need much more support.
So we also consider the Colored Conventions Project to be a teaching project, and we share a commitment to mentoring and supporting students at our home institutions and beyond. Our Digital Archives Committee and our Exhibit Committee both work with teaching partners to help their students create exhibits that share the Colored Conventions history in a visually engaging way by featuring documents, biographies, and curating data into visualizations. And we've worked with more than 2,000 students across the country to engage in original research through our Seeking Records and Digital Exhibits curricula and library research guides. We are committed to producing open access educational resources that encourage investigation into the themes and debates that arise in convention minutes. And here you can see just a snapshot of some of our teaching partners. CCP team members are provided training in developing educational resources, ranging from comprehensive curriculum packages to individual research guides and tutorials. And these materials have evolved over time to reflect the changing needs of our project. A good example of the growth that we've experienced in this area is our digital exhibits curriculum packages. First launched by our co-founder, Dr. Sarah Patterson, now an assistant professor of English at UMass Amherst in 2015. Sarah's team developed a detailed guide outlining how to build digital exhibits using Omeka Classic, as well as an editorial manual and the first version of the project's library research guide. Last spring, we launched an updated research curriculum on our new WordPress site, complete with video tutorials and sample exhibits. In the years since, CCP has curated, and their teaching partners and their students have curated 16 digital exhibits. And we also have 6 more unpublished exhibits that are currently under revision, so keep an eye out for those. In addition to learning how to develop educational resources, graduate students and undergrads learn how to work with faculty and teaching partners throughout all stages of this process. Graduate students play a key role in the onboarding process as they help to orient teaching partners to our project principles and practices. They collaborate with faculty and librarians as they plan courses and assignments, and they help to troubleshoot when partners and their students encounter obstacles. One of our favorite parts of this work includes holding CCP office hours, where team members video call in with their partners' classes. And then this spring semester, we just began a multi-part partnership with Kate Master and her students at Northwestern University. Dr. Master's class is working alongside with our archives committee, our exhibits team, and our curriculum committee to build a digital exhibit, contribute records, and develop a corresponding K-12 curricula on the Antebellum Ohio Convention. So these are all really exciting developments. And here's just a sampling of some of the digital exhibits on our site.
Right. So what does this mean for our students, and really, like, so what? So the first thing, of course, is that we're providing students with real meaningful opportunities to connect and build towards the project's larger goals and initiatives for the academic year. We avoid one-off projects, and we aim to connect team members to communities outside of our Delaware-based hub. As we introduce new work, we spend a significant amount of time explaining and communicating how this fits into broader project goals. So if you were to ask the project's senior team members about the work they started with during their first term, compared to what they're working on now, you'd likely find that most are doing very different work. We acknowledge and accept that for most team members, it'll take some time for them to settle in and to find their place within the project. CCP is a fairly large and complex project, so there's a lot going on, and there's definitely a learning curve. That being said, we're committed to working with team members to help them find that place.
So for instance, the co-chair of the project's exhibit committee, Michelle Burns, is now a senior undergraduate at Penn State University, and she began the project as an undergraduate researcher at the University of Delaware, who was working with me. After about a semester of supervising her archival research, I began to notice that Michelle tended to gravitate to work with data visualization, and I started to build in opportunities for Michelle to work with our data curation and website development team. Unfortunately for me, I ended up losing a really good researcher. But fortunately for our project, we gained a pivotal member who's now one of the leads on our migration from our Omeka Classic site to WordPress and our new WordPress digital exhibits curriculum. I'd also like to add that Michelle, although an undergraduate, is now the co-chair of the project's exhibits and website committee, along with her colleague, history PhD candidate Kelly Coles. And I highly recommend everyone take a look at our exhibit guide on WordPress. It's amazing. And Michelle worked on this for about a year and a half, and we're so happy that it's now up and accessible for everyone on our website.
So while providing graduate students with meaningful opportunities to contribute to and engage in real measurable work, while that's important, we argue that the ways in which these opportunities are structured is equally as important. We operate under an apprenticeship model where senior project members mentor those who are more junior. Graduate students are team leaders on most initiatives, serving as committee chairs or leads on short-term projects. We also structure opportunities for junior graduate and undergraduate members to mentor and train newcomers, just as Anna mentioned about Michelle. This model allows team members at all levels to take an active leadership role and helps us to distribute our work. Just this past semester, one of our undergraduate researchers, Brianna Richardson, led a team of new undergraduate researchers alongside our reference and instructional services librarian, Caitlin Tanis. She also created a digital archives documentation cheat sheet that she circulated among the group to guide them through the process of sharing their research findings with the rest of the team. And then here we have some photos of another project that she worked on. We were going to, Kelly Coles was presenting on behalf of the CCP at a conference in UT Austin. And we decided it was a great opportunity for us to engage in some research. And Brianna, being the amazing researcher that she is, was asked to lead a team at UT Austin's Briscoe Center to go through and look for color conventions records. And so, being the only undergraduate on that team, she led myself and 2 other graduate students, a postdoctoral fellow, and Gabrielle Foreman, our director, in research through their microfilm reels, physical archives, and their newspaper databases to locate records. We have now at least a few dozen newspaper coverages, as well as a really great find of a reprint of one of the convention's records in Maryland, oddly enough. So all of that was resulting work from Brianna's planning and careful crafting of our itinerary, which had clear results for our archive, and also we hope will incite new teaching partners throughout Texas, who hopefully will build out a Texas digital exhibit.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about work plans and reporting out, which are 2 major structures that guide our work. So in recent years, we've had to adjust to the reality that it's not always possible for us to meet in the same place or as frequently as we'd like. And this became especially apparent this spring. One strategy that we found to be especially effective is the use of work plans to guide a range of project activities. And this ranges from smaller one-term projects to multi-year initiatives. These plans not only help to outline deliverables and outcomes, but map out how we will complete them within a specific timeline. And of course, like most things, these work plans aren't set in stone, but they function as a flexible guide for work. And as we switched to remote instruction during the 3rd week of our spring semester, these work plans became more important than ever. They helped keep us organized when we could no longer be in the same space. They allowed us to make adjustments, and most importantly, they allowed us to record and celebrate our achievements. And here's an example of just 2 work plans. The one on the left is our overview for all of our committee activities, and then the one on the right is actually one that a graduate student and I drafted over the summer to guide her work. Reporting out is also really important for us, and our project structures in multiple opportunities for reporting out and work. And this again allows us to communicate on our achievements and setbacks and make the adjustments as needed. Generally, committee members will report out to each other on their week's work prior to the working meetings on either Basecamp or Slack. And these weekly reports are followed by some sort of brief discussion during the weekly meeting. And then about once a month, each committee will provide a brief 5 to 10-minute update to the full team on the status of their team's work, highlighting any major achievements and outlining next steps. And at the end of every term, committee leads and graduate students, and then senior undergrads as well, are responsible for co-writing a formal semester report that references any other associated work plans. And we find that these reports are really useful for not only grant writing purposes, but they also help to keep the rest of the team up on the status of all of the projects. It's really difficult to keep track of everything that's going on, but we love to review each other's work plans and reports at the end of the semester and see what everyone's actually been working on.
So all of our structures and procedures and work plans are actually motivated not just by the sort of ins and outs of the project and its sort of immediate logistical needs, but also because we have a culture of care, which is a critical aspect of our success and another area where grad students receive training and support. So although this is probably the least legible of the work that we do, it is crucial. In addition to eating together, I can't say that we love that enough, like I'll just keep bringing it up, but we also explicitly support each other academically and personally. Grad students write letters of recommendation. We work on with other students on their personal statements and letters of intent for internships in grad school. We advocate for our students in their professors' classes and sometimes even with administration when necessary. We strive to meet needs, both expressed and unexpressed, of our collective as best as we can, even when those are really quite intangible. So for example, at the end of all of our working meetings as a group, whether it's in person or virtual, we have something called circle time, where we hold space for the things that we call on each other to collectively celebrate, mourn, reflect on, or send healing thoughts to. This culture of care is demonstrated by co-director Dr. Foreman, and we certainly seek her support and intervention as necessary. But often the first and the last line of defense are our grad students. We do this work because we believe that team members who feel comfortable bringing their whole selves to the project, knowing that they will receive the support they need, manifests as excellence in the many committees' projects. While it wasn't a surprise to see ourselves successfully shift to working 100% remotely, I was astounded by our ability to find new ways to practice our culture of care in COVID. By trial and error, we learned to give committees more autonomy in navigating their way towards navigating their own way towards completing the semester's work. And we quickly realized how real Zoom fatigue is. So we streamlined work meetings and calls and report outs, while also making more time for social hours, where our whole team would come together to check in on one another. Those social hours also became spaces to coordinate food deliveries to the sick and socially distant visits to those members, as well as to the class of 2020 graduates, which included Brianna.
So I want to close to just highlight some of our placements. So in the past few years, we've placed people in postdocs and academic positions at Penn, Princeton, UMass Amherst, and Penn State. Undergraduates have gone from more than 40 majors and minors to law school, graduate school in public history, German, speech pathology, PhD students in comparative literature, design, and systems analysis. Our former grants committee chair, Dr. Clayton Coleman, is now the Associate Director for Digital and Online Learning at the University of Pennsylvania School of Arts and Sciences. And our former undergraduate researcher, Eric Brown, who is now a law student at NYU, and he also completed a 2-year Justice Fellowship for recent college graduates and young professionals at the Equal Justice Initiative.
Ooh, we are so proud. So as we close, I want to draw your attention to this slide and the following slide about the status of diversity and inclusion in American higher ed and cultural institutions. This is the backdrop that we as CCP are working against, and that we hope to transform through our work. From the little things like work plans and social hours to the big picture things like organizational structures and grant-funded initiatives, we're about building a pipeline and partnerships. We do so because we know team members move through our project and ultimately end up at academic and cultural institutions that fall so very short of attaining inclusive hiring practices, pedagogies, and public works. If the CCP can facilitate and support the professional development of team members of color, then we're supporting the diversification of institutions where Black archives are held and histories are told or go untold. And regardless of our team members' race, we take serious that our work and team culture are opportunities to empower one another to demand accountability for diversity, inclusion, and labor attribution in our places of work. Likewise, team members come from a range of places and cultures that are their homes. And leveraging our skills and resources to connect to our community's needs is a political act of love and preservation, as Audre Lorde would suggest. But our project, like everything else, is changing because of COVID-19. And it has required us to alter the ways we work and connect at the same time that has revealed how deeply problematic and precarious our institutions are. We feel DH projects like ours are uniquely positioned to train and support team members who will respond to institutional barriers and failures even now, when such responses will depend heavily on technical skills and project-based experience. And we insist that being empowered to advocate for cultures of care and compensation is just as important as those technical skills. Savvy transactions or inflexible policies and procedures for DH projects won't help us make it through the COVID era, but supporting people and nurturing relationships that enrich our projects and hold space for our full humanity will do so.
When you think of CCP, think of community, cohorts, and credit. And this is a picture, one of my favorite pictures of our team at our end of year party at Dr. Foreman's house. And you can even see her dog Amos dressed up in a Project T. So thank you very much.
Our honorary mascot.
Our honorary mascot.
Wonderful.
So thanks to everyone.
Thank you so much, Brandi and Anna. My head just about fell off of my neck from nodding so vigorously throughout your presentation. It's incredibly important, incredibly necessary work that you're doing, and incredibly inspiring. And I think I speak for maybe everyone on the line in saying thank you for your presentation. So there's currently one question, and while I'm asking this and while Brandi and Anna address it, I'd like to encourage others to put their questions into the Q&A. But Stephanie at Wake Forest asks, if you have them, would you mind sharing templates for your work plans and reports, or do you find that they vary a little too much?
We have them. I can share them after the presentation. I just want to clean them up a bit and make sure that we're removing any sensitive information, but I'd be happy to do that.
Excellent, thank you. I have another question actually, let's see. Well, Meredith, also at Wake Forest, asks, she'd love to learn more about the actual exhibits that you all have produced. All the information about the process and your team is really helpful and exciting. But do you have favorite exhibits? What are the most interesting ways that you've managed to share and get people to engage with archival materials?
So I'll definitely give Anna an opportunity to jump in about what her favorite exhibit is. I don't have one that I've co-created in there yet. Mine is one of the ones under review. But I think that that's actually a trickier question than people would think, because one of the things that our project is still learning to do is to try to track who's using our exhibits in what context or how they're engaging them. So we actually could have a better sense of who's using it, but at the moment, our best understanding of how it's been used is when teaching partners tell us what their thoughts are, or they come up to us and say, hey, I used your exhibit in my class. I wasn't an official teaching partner, but this is what I did, and this is how it was useful in my class. And we're finding that it's become a really critical tool in order for students to get an understanding and a grasp around the movement through these documents. So there's a lot of ways in which the exhibits are serving as a way to really complicate and bust through some of the myths that surround what the experiences were of Black people in America in that century, especially prior to the Civil War, and what our notions of Black organizing are. Like, so many of students encounter for the first time this notion that Black folks organized well before the Civil Rights Movement through our documents, and understanding that it wasn't just about abolitionism. So, for me, I think one of the best exhibits, and I think Anna will probably speak a little bit on it, is one about boarding houses and how women and children were crucial to the movement because of the ways they propped up the movement economically and through creating safe spaces for delegates to participate outside of the convention, but still together as a community. So Anna can talk about what that looks like in an exhibit, of course.
Yeah, so we actually have two exhibits on boarding houses in the conventions movement. One curated by Sam DeVera in 2016, and then another one that I co-curated. But I would also wanted to add that we've found out in the last couple of years that our exhibits are being adopted by teachers in high schools. Yes. And we have a partner who we've worked with who is a high school teacher in Arizona. And he actually led his students through the process of going through convention minutes and then creating data visualizations, which were then shared with a graduate student actually in Brandi's class. And they're going to be a part of a digital exhibit there. So I think when we initially launched these exhibits, we hadn't necessarily anticipated they'd be adopted in high school classrooms, but that's becoming more and more apparent. And that's something that we're seeking to expand upon with our new K-12 curriculum. And we're actually building out specific pages for teaching partners in sixth to eighth grade and then high school.
Wonderful. So I had another question that came up kind of early in your presentation. So for those that are unfamiliar with those underlying principles of collective organizing around which you have based your whole project, first, what inspired those, and how well has that gone in organizing this project? And for those that are unfamiliar, where can they go to learn more about organizing a project with those principles?
So we actually didn't officially write down our project principles until the fall of 2017. And that was after about a year and a half's worth of discussion and debate with team members. And I think this came out of a desire that we needed to put this on paper so that we could keep team members accountable. These were things that we were sort of doing because they felt right, but we really felt the need to record it and then actually kind of spell out how we could enact these principles in all aspects of our work. And I think it became especially important because our team doesn't just include like faculty leads, like we have undergraduates, graduate students, librarians, community members, and we really wanted to make sure that everyone's work was valued and that they were, you know, an equal contributor to the project. Brandi, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Dr. Foreman has a long history of relationships with social justice activist organizations. And I think it came very naturally for her to say, you know, what we're trying to do is create a principle. How can we draw on these communities that are impeccable models for bringing that into their work and using it as a really important tool to determine not just things procedurally within and with, you know, external partners, but also to really announce what our values were and to, you know, to really shine a light on where we can make those improvements. So this is sort of our core right now, but I could very well see these principles changing or emerging as the project changes, because at the core of them are relationships and people. And it's not the procedures that matter. It's not the details per se. It's about what our values in engaging each other really are. So I think it's something that most projects, especially DH projects, don't have, but we highly, highly recommend, even if it's not in a formal, you know, statement kind of way, people coming together in projects and saying, you know, let's stop and take an accounting of this, because without it, it's very easy to move forward through projects and partnerships where you turn around and you look and you realize there's some things there that you're not quite proud of in terms of how, you know, junior members of the teams are treated, or, you know, situations that could have been avoided if it was clear from the jump what our values are and how we're going to engage each other.
And I'd also like to add that having these principles gives us something to constantly reflect back on. So just 2 weeks ago, I was reviewing our corpus memo of understanding and our teaching partner MOUs. I was like, man, these things are really outdated. Mm-hmm. We actually need to go back and revisit them. And, you know, in our last set of partnerships, like, I don't think we've actually hit all of these points. So it's just something to keep us accountable and like kind of guide our growth as we move forward.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. So we have a few more minutes left if anyone else has a question. So I'll maybe let that hang out there for a minute. And then if not, I will turn it back over to Carrie, who can guide the ship into the next thing.
I do have one quick question for Anna and Brandi, and it's just more of a personal question on how you got involved in the project, if it was something that drew you to the University of Delaware, or if it came up as you were graduate students there. Can you just tell us a little bit more about your involvement early on with this project?
Brandi, do you want to start?
No, you go first. You're the senior.
Okay. So I actually became involved with the Color Conventions Project during the summer of going into my second year as a master's student. And I had been connected through an internship director. And at that point, I was trying to decide, you know, like whether or not I wanted to stay on for a PhD or kind of just graduate with the master's. And I started out as just a, you know, sideline researcher, and then I grew into kind of a project chair role and now coordinator. And my involvement with this project has been instrumental in shaping kind of career interests beyond like what you would traditionally think is academic careers, and really my own interest in digital humanities. And it's also shaped my dissertation work. So I think in like so many ways, this has made my graduate career like so much better.
Yeah, so the project was already well underway when Dr. Foreman approached me. I had asked her for a letter of recommendation to get into grad schools, and she said, well, why don't you come to UD? I'm in the English department. And I was actually looking at Black Studies programs and ethnic study programs across the country. So this was the only English program I looked at. Because I knew when she said things would be different and that this project would be a crucial part of how it would be a different experience, I 100% believed her. And part of why I did was because as an undergrad, she led a research team. I was the youngest member of that research team. where we did archival research as well. And I could sort of see how the excitement I had back then was just the tip of the iceberg. Now that she was at UD, taking something as compelling as that original project and morphing it into this thing that was making huge, huge waves historiographically in Black history. So it was certainly compelling. I had no idea though what I was getting into. And similarly to Anna, I am so grateful for the ability to see where these digital skills are going to take me, and to give me a whole set of avenues professionally that I would have never really explored on my own, except for through this project. So when I first came on, I was co-chair of the social media committee. And while that was really great and worthwhile, and I still do some of the social media work for CCP, I was so excited to move into digital archives and teaching partnerships and learn about a whole nother sector of the project's work that I knew was central to it, but couldn't imagine how complex and how intellectually stimulating it is. And then especially how great it is to be put in touch with other digital humanists like everyone here today. So it's been such a roller coaster in the best sense. And I think that that's something that, you know, people who are thinking about joining digital projects should really be open to.